Good evening. The Madison County Board of Education regular session for Tuesday, September 13th, 2022 is in session. Before we begin, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to read a memo from Mr. Perkins. He is not present due to a family situation. But he said, Mr. Curry, due to an emergency situation that will prevent me from conducting the September 13th board meeting, I give Ken Kubik, Director of Personnel, the full authority to convene, facilitate, and make decisions in my absence at the September 13th, 2022 board meeting. Sincerely, Alan Perkins. Okay. With that, Mr. Weiss, would you do the invocation, please?
Let us bow our heads. Lord Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us the opportunity to gather this evening to do your work for the children of Madison County schools. And we ask your blessings upon us here this evening and all of our staff, faculty, and students in your heavenly name. Amen.
Mr. Kubik.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. To begin with, I want to let you know that I have been in contact with Mr. Perkins, and Mr. Perkins has informed me of the recommendations that he wants to make for this evening, and these are the ones that I'm about to make our hits. And also, we have some students from Alabama A&M University. Welcome, ladies. We appreciate you being here today, and we hope you have a good experience. I recommend approval of the agenda dated September 13th, 2022.
Motion. Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second of approval, the recommendation for approval of the agenda dated Tuesday, September 13th, 2022. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I recommend approval of the minutes dated August 18th, 2022 as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of minutes dated August 18th, 2022. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Item 2 on the agenda, request to address the board. We'll do a quick roll call to see if these individuals are present. I know one of them is not currently. Miss Kristen Harris. Okay. Miss Harris. And Miss Sierra Vahan. Did I say that right? Vihan. Okay. All right, present. All right. We're going to start with you, Ms. Harris. I'm going to read this statement before you proceed for both. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. In the event you wish to address the board on an issue involving the good name and character, physical condition, professional competence, mental health, or in some instances, job performance of an individual, or confidential student information, the board will hear your comments in executive session. If you're unsure whether your comments should be made in executive session, please see our board attorney, Ms. Cynthia Thompson. Okay? Ms. Harris.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Can y'all hear me? My name is Kristen. I have 2 children in the Madison County school system currently. I'm here to discuss concerns I have regarding what my children are being taught while at school. In the past few years, many schools across our country have been exposed for their indecent material and indoctrinating curriculum. As a parent, this is alarming. I am rigorous in my efforts to be involved in all information that my children are learning. This can be a difficult task in today's modern world. Unfortunately, most assignments are completed on a Chromebook at school, and very few papers actually come to our home. Especially concerning are grades I can't see without papers to show for them. I do believe the school board can be transparent about curriculum chosen as required updates evolve year to year so that parents have an opportunity to research and view it. A few weeks ago, it was brought to my attention by a friend that the Madison County School Board had purchased a new ELA curriculum that contained many stories that were strange and concerning for parents and teachers, specifically to elementary-age children. After viewing the CKLA book for 4th grade, I did have some concerns. Unfortunately, I have limited time here and can only point to a few things tonight. A good lie is the first story in the book. In the last paragraph, quoting the story, quote, "Now I ask you, was Lily's lie a bad thing, a sin? I certainly don't think so. I think it was a gift." I want to also mention sin is bold because it is a vocabulary word. The book's definition, sin, is a violation of a moral principle. The story is asking the question, was telling a lie a sin, and suggesting not if it's in kindness or generosity. Is the writer replacing the moral standard of always telling the truth? I don't feel it's the duty of the education system to teach my children what is or is not a sin. Our religious beliefs are taught within our home and based on biblical truth. Last week, my son brought home a list of vocabulary words to study. Some of these included prickly, embedded, crevices, enticing. He struggled or had a hard time relating to these words. I asked him if he could use them in a sentence, and this was a challenge. Some of these words seemed provocative and inappropriate. After reading an overview, I understood why. I have provided a copy of an overview of a book. This prologue, How to Eat a Guava, is derived from the book When I Was Puerto Rican by Esmeralda Santiago. Let me share the first paragraph of the passage in the story. There are guavas at the shop and save. I pick one the size of a tennis ball and finger the prickly stem end. It feels familiarly bumpy and firm. The guava is not quite ripe. The skin is still dark green. I smell it and imagine a pale pink center, the seeds tightly embedded in the flesh. This context sounds like it comes from an adult romance novel, not a fourth grade reading assignment. As you prayed here in this meeting, I also pray may God be with each of you, guiding your decisions and choices made for our children in this county. You have been appointed a high responsibility, and I pray God uses you to fight for good and always reject evil.
Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Thank you.
Ms. Sierra Vihan. Give us 1 second, Ms. Vihan. Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Good job.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Sierra, and I have 2 kids in the Madison County District, one at Riverton Intermediate and one at Buckhorn Middle. We escaped California 7 months ago in order to raise our children in a better environment. I'm here tonight over the content being discussed and taught in the 7th grade advanced civics course, although I wish I had time to speak on the new curriculum being used in my 4th graders class as well. During the first week of school, my son and his class were told by his teacher that they had been brainwashed since kindergarten by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to promote patriotism. He was told socialism isn't that bad and noticed a Power Fist poster on the classroom wall. The poster was eventually removed after 3 weeks of school. But I reached out to Angie Bates, who didn't acknowledge my email until this past Saturday, the principal, and then the teacher regarding my concerns, and was made to feel that I was being sensitive and that we could move forward with the understanding that brainwashing just had a negative connotation. So keeping him in the classroom a few weeks later, when discussing the formation of the government and the documents that helped form our country, the teacher mentioned a book, The Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes, and used that as a segue to bring up a piece of art that was created based on the cover of the book that featured George Floyd. This created heated discussions, including topics like police brutality and racial injustice, that were not a positive learning environment and created division among classmates. Students were yelling at other classmates who challenged George Floyd for being framed as a hero. Why does this need to fit into the discussion of our government's founding? After learning about this, I pulled my son from the class and emailed the principal about my concerns. I never received a response. Where do these topics fit into the school and state standards? What is the procedure for handling these topics being taught and discussed? How does this promote a positive learning environment? And how is this not brainwashing? How is this not political indoctrination that is taking place in the classroom? So what can I do as a parent when my child informs me that his teacher is teaching her political views in the classroom and causing division among classmates? Well, I can pull him from the class and leave the other children to be indoctrinated. I can come here and beg y'all to do your job and fix what is going on in the classroom. I can reach out to the principal and the board and get ignored. I will remind you that as a taxpayer and a parent, y'all work for us parents, and it's our job to vote in board members that will fight for the betterment of our children, not to help with the pushing of the progressive movement and creating division in the classroom. I am here to ask y'all to do what is right, and I pray that this weighs heavily on your hearts. Our children should not know how their teachers vote. They need to stay in their lane and do their job of teaching, not indoctrinating. I will end with a quote from Abraham Lincoln. The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation is the philosophy of the government in the next. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Vian. Okay, item 3 on our agenda is the,
Good question. Can we put curriculum on the board meeting?
Session?
Yeah, for a work session to discuss some of this stuff. So that's the first I've heard of that one. The other one, we get tidbits on.
I will say, me and Mr. Weiss had a meeting with Mr. Solly, and one thing that we recently had a conversation of was to have a work session, have a discussion on curriculum at a board meeting. So that has been a conversation that
Good.
Dave and I have had
Okay,
just
yeah.
recently. Yes.
So can it happen soon?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Item 3, second budget hearing. Ms. O'Bannon.
Good evening. I just need a few minutes this time for the second public budget hearing. I provided each of you an annual budget booklet, compliments of our Madison County Board's print shop. Again, we're just going to look at a few pages throughout the booklet. So at the end, if you have some questions, please let me know. But as always, look at page 1. This year, again, page 1 reflects our mission statement as a school system and the mission statement of the budget process. And I would like to read that, the mission statement of the budget process. This is my mission statement for the budget process. The strategic plan mission statement is something set by the school board. But the mission of the budget process is to help decision makers with choices about the services and needs of a particular department, activity, or local school function. The budget process includes planning resources and prioritizing needs among the school district to support its goals and our strategic plan that's been adopted by the board. The budget is a tool to evaluate. This is most importantly for me and the finance department. The budget is a tool to evaluate financial performance and to provide financial accountability to all of our stakeholders. And that's why we're here tonight and work so hard as a team to plan and prepare the budget to coincide with our strategic plan to serve our students where academic achievement is the highest goal. So for tonight, we basically took that PowerPoint presentation that you guys received last week that we went over in great detail. We took that information and brought it forward into this booklet. So if you'll follow me to just a few important pages, go over to page 5, our summary report. This is a summary for all fund types that we broke down last week. It brings it all together in this required exhibit from the State Department's Education's requirements. So this is what's in the agenda for you to approve tonight. So you will see on the very last total column, our total revenues are $250 million. And general fund operations, go back to the very far left column, are operations of $2.3 million. This is our projected budget with an ending fund balance of $37 million. So let's take that first column, that general fund, and flip over to the next page. We've gone through this since last week, and we just made a few changes. I'll go over those, but this is the meat of the general operating budget. The only change we made was to finalize the indirect cost, the revenue that we received in the general fund from federal programs. So it's to cover managing those programs, and the state sets the indirect cost rate that we can charge each federal program. So that the revenues went up to 204,748. That's an increase of 730,000. That's the indirect cost we will receive from all the major federal programs. And we had to correct a few personnel things that when we were finalizing the budget. And by the way, Gina Gross is in the back. And yes, she's awesome. She's my partner. And we've gone through this, I don't know how many times, to make sure the final version is accurate. So she and I will be, I don't know what we'll be doing to celebrate sending this off in the mail this week. But we did add 21,000 in expenditures as we were going through from last week. So everything's final, and these are the final numbers. And remember, when you look at all these expenditure line items on page 6, we received input from the instruction department, the transportation department, although it wasn't Mr. Randolph, he wasn't here at the time, bringing him up to speed, the operations department with Mr. Casort, the IT department, health services, ARI, CMP, all the federal programs administrators, student services, personnel department, and it goes on, communications, to enter the actual budget detail to come to these numbers. So in doing that, we also plan for professional development in every area in our school district. So this included the mandated training required under our consent order. This is budgeted in the line items for Dr. Ballard under Director of Equity and Innovation. So that's just one example of what's in these line items for professional development and other things. Another example might be Solution Tree, which is a great program for our kiddos learning the PLC training. And with that PD, we pay some of that from Title I, Title II. Local schools fund some of that when they have extra sessions going on. So that's just a few examples of what is in this one page as far as the line items go. And let's go quickly to a reminder. Flip to the next page, page 7, please. A few reminders for current cost as well as future goals, costs, and challenges. Remember, we talked about our SPED mandates and services, that these are impact on our local budget. The support for the capital plan and the growth that we're experiencing, we're going to talk about that a little bit later tonight. Adding security resource officers for the safety of our students. Sustain that one-to-one initiative for our student devices, as well as other educational mandates and services, including summer school. That's very expensive, but something we need to do and is very important for our students. So from this point out, I've marked a few tabs to re-emphasize. So first go to page 23, please. And if anybody wants a copy of this, I can make it available. That does not have one. Just remember the local revenue projections for fiscal year 2023. Here for property tax, those tax projections, and the mandated cost, it is a cost of the 10 mil match. Just to show that again. Then move to page 25. These are our millage rates, and this is just a great resource to have when questions are asked about local funding. We talked about this again last week. Then pages 27 and 28. This is the percentage distribution, for all countywide school taxes that we share with Huntsville City and Madison City schools. Just so you can see what that looks like again. That will be measured again the first 20 days after Labor Day when our ADM is captured, or our student enrollment. The next page is very important. Every year I show the local revenue comparisons, the funding per student with Huntsville City and Madison City. Okay, the other fund types are included in the booklet. The special revenue fund type that we just went over last week, debt service, capital projects, and fiduciary non-public local school funds. So The only change from that presentation is the capital plan on page 48, where we did make some changes after the work session last week. And looking at this, I didn't change any monies around as far as the budget is concerned. For any significant changes with funds, I can do that at our budget amendment, when we do our first budget amendment in January, if that's necessary. As far as moving projects around, that is not a problem. We can do that at any time, the board, when you revisit the capital plan. But where we have Moore's Mill Intermediate for the classroom wing and the learning cottages, we have Harvest in there, replace that. It's still in parentheses. And then where we made, the reason it, instead of Moore's Mill, we're discussing and talking about moving the 5th and 6th grade kids, students, back to Hazel Green Elementary for students zoned in that area. So that would take some off of Moore's Mill, since Hazel Green Elementary has more room. And then we noted on here to cover the PE classes of the 5th and 6th graders eventually that would be there, so a Woolly Gym upgrade for that. So that's the only changes in the back. The last page that's numbered is page 51. And that's the fiscal year 2023 staffing summary. So the last pages, the summary shows where we are as far as the number of employees and our student enrollment. Again, we will capture 22-23 in a few weeks. So that would be, that's left blank right now. But to see our estimated, and it's a great estimate, of 2,502 employees, with a lot of those being funded through our ESSER monies. The next pages, these are forms sent to us by the State Department of Education. So the format looks very tricky. The font sizes are all different. It's a little archaic. So we have to key this in, believe it or not. So that's why the size of the numbers is different. But this is our staffing numbers for the 2022-2023 school year. And that's also required to go in with our budget. Any questions tonight?
All right. Thank you, Ms. O'Bannon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Mr. Cubitt?
I recommend approval of the July 2022 financial statements and payments of bills as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the July financial statements and payment of bills as attached. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the 2022-2023 Madison County School System's budget as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the 2022-2023 Madison County School System budget as submitted. Any discussion?
The only thing I want to say is, Karen, as I sunset off the board here in the next month and a half or so, I do want to thank you for teaching me. When I first came on the board, this is very daunting to learn and understand. And I appreciate you sitting down with me and going over it and helping me to truly understand how the budgetary process works here in Madison County Schools. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the machine shop bid rejection as submitted.
Motion.
Oh, second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the rejection of the machine shop bid as submitted. Any discussion? It seemed like that was over significantly more than what we anticipated. So, and then plus with the additional less students in the virtual school, we have the capacity. So we're just leave it as it is. Is that correct? Okay.
We have capacity to grow where we're at.
Okay.
We do have that. We kept that on the capital plan. Because much good we did now. So we'll see it in the future. We will. So,
Okay. Very good. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the 2023-2027 capital plan as submitted.
Motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the 2023 to 2027 capital plan. Any discussion? Mr. Cubic, got anything?
Yes, after the work session that we had earlier this month and listening to the board members and what some suggestions we had, we went out and visited some more schools and took a look at our capital and our capacity numbers and what the schools had and didn't have. And one of the things that we had determined was that by taking the 5th and 6th grade out of Moore's Mill and leaving, they would still have 5th and 6th, but it would be Lynn Fanning's 5th and 6th. But the 5th and 6th from Hazel Green would no longer come down there. What we could do is we could leave Moore's Mill alone. We wouldn't have to put the learning cottages, nor would we have to put the wing on there. We would leave the Lynn Fanning wing and the cottages as is. And it gave us an opportunity to relocate those projects there to the Harvest campus, which is there's in dire need of. So we would go ahead and move that same project, but we move it to North Sparkman Zone and at the Harvest Elementary School. So the learning cottages would go on there, and then those 4, and then with the plans to build the wing on at Harvest. We still are going to talk about the rezoning some lines for the Harvest and the Madison Crossroads Zone. One of the things we did find when we went out to Hazel Green Elementary School was that the gym for the elementary schools is really small. And so it's fine for primary, but when you get into the larger bodies of our intermediate students, we need to go ahead and look at some, an alternate source. And we have the Woolley gym that's already there. It just needs to be revamped and revitalized and brought back up to a facility that could be used. And it's on attached to the elementary campus, so it's right there. So that's why we have the Woolley gym in there and the money in there for the capital plan to go ahead and get that cleaned up, get it usable, and get it so that it can be used by the elementary schools all the way through lunchtime, and then 4th block on, the high schools can come over and use it for after school spring sports and things like that when there's weather and inclement weather where they can't get outside. So
A snapshot of what needs to be done to bring it up to standard. I'm assuming the floors need to be redone and bleachers.
there's turf that has been glued onto the old floor, so all that's going to have to be pulled up and reset. What we were talking about, and Mr. Kuzer, please speak up, if we're looking at that kind of that rubber composite that our elementaries have, that is a multi-use flooring, so that if say baseball and softball from the high school were to come in there, they could get on there with tennis shoes and still be able to utilize it. So, Mr. Kuzort?
right, like I say, due to the floor now having an astroturf glued down, I think we'll look at it both ways. What's it going to cost to try to refurbish that and use it versus taking it out? Because it's pour, it's called pad and pour. It's rubberized. The good thing about that is you have a water leak, anything like that, it doesn't swell or ruin the wood floor. The rest of it, basic cleanup, some painting, maybe some drop ceiling that's areas to make it a little better, rejuvenate the men's and women's restroom in the front. And then there's some areas there I would just close off for the athletics, maybe make sure we have some good doors there that they can, keep those off. Mechanical units there are good. The roof is mediocre. Don't have any leaks, but it's aged. But like I said, the mechanical units that we just installed, a new mechanical unit, probably within the last few weeks, we took the condition there. So, but basically cleaned up in that floor.
Okay.
Is it covered all the way? Is there a covered awning all the way to the Woolley gym?
There is not. I did reach out to someone for next week, let's look at an awning coming off the back wing of Hazel Green Elementary, out and down that sidewalk that's already existing, and then back into that, so they can be covered all the way.
So you have a gym, and that would, so do you have people having gym at the same time, like two different grades, or how do you use the second gym? You split the grades up?
So the way the school's designed is if you think about it, in the center being the heart of the school and then having a south side and a north side. The south side, talking with Ms. Cross, the principal, she would make that more of the primary, so that would be down to your K2s, and then we'd have our K3s, and we'd have 4, 5, and 6 on the north side, so we'd have it split that way. So they would be utilizing the smaller gym with, the younger students, and then they would have on the north side where the Woolly gym is, they'd be able to utilize that for the intermediate students.
Okay.
So that way. And the only other thing that we needed to look at is we're just gonna go through and make sure that the cafeteria looked like it was large enough for feeding. We just wanna make sure that we have the, we're gonna go through and just check the kitchen equipment and make sure everything's good there. It was one of the areas there.
At the time, Terry Campbell had a family event, he was CMD supervisor over maintenance, and he and I was doing that.
Okay.
The other thing that's really important here is we talked about that corridor, talk about corridors down at New Hope, and that's also on here to get that corridor taken care of for the safety piece down at New Hope High School. So that was another big piece that we got in here. The Riverton, going and look at the Riverton Intermediate, Riverton Elementary campuses again. Dr. Minsky and I believe Mr. Fusort went out there, or it might have been Mr. Malone. Mr. Malone, they went out there and they looked at the campuses. We have some plans that we can go ahead and adjust some classrooms there for some immediate growth. So we're okay with Riverton Elementary and Riverton Intermediate. So they've been pushed down to the following year as far as looking at the learning cottages and the wings at that point.
So as far as additions to schools right now for this coming school year, well, this year, learning cottages at Lynn Fanning and Harvest with possible construction for the next school year.
Correct, we would start the design.
How soon would the learning colleges will be for the 23-24 school year?
Correct.
Okay,
We would have those on campus and ready for the start of school next year.
gotcha. Okay.
And the approach for Hazel Green Elementary and the way to handle that is instead of moving the students back out of Moores Mill and moving them north again and upsetting that, what we're going to do is we're planning to leave the 4th grade in place there. So them, instead of moving them down, the 5th and 6th will still stay with Moores Mill, but the 4th will just stay up. So we'll have 5th there. Just next year it'd be a K5. And then the following year, they would stay
K4.
again. And so that way they stay basically currently in their cohort all the way through Hazel Green. And it'll, instead of upsetting and taking a 6th grade back out of Moores Mill and moving back up for 1 year, and then they would all
that's fine.
reconjoin back at Meridianville in 7th and 8th. So it's a 2-year process
gotcha.
basically before it becomes a K6. It'll be a
You'll have-
K5 next year and then a
So
K6.
you'll have buses kind of running a route, a 4th grade going to Morris Mill and a 4th grade going to Hazel Green that could potentially live in the same area?
It would be just, Jeff, would that not be just
At
a
least
6th
temporary.
grade?
Sixth
6th grade would be
okay.
the only one. That
Okay.
would be, we'd only have that problem with 6th
Sixth
grade for
grade.
1 year.
Okay, gotcha. Makes sense.
Should also help out with busing as well.
Speaking of busing, I mean, not to go way off track, has there been any consideration of these communities that are right next to schools? I know we bus all kids, period. Been any consideration of having a way that kids could walk to school that live adjacent directly to the school?
I have not personally had that conversation with Mr. Perkins. I do not know if Mr. Perkins and Dr. Minsky or Mr. Malone have had that conversation.
Okay, something to think about. Okay. Just said buses made me think about it. Okay. Any more discussion about the 2023-2027 capital plan? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I recommend approval of contracts for services as submitted.
Motion?
Sorry, I drew. Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of contracts for services as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I recommend approval of the certified mechanic's job description as submitted.
Motion.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the certified mechanic's job description. Is there any discussion? I know there was some conversation about the type of CDL. You got all that. We're solid on that. What you need, your needs, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The minimum was state.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
That's good.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I recommend approval of the personnel items and addendum as submitted.
Motion.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the personnel items and addendum as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of supplemental contracts as submitted.
Motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of supplemental contracts as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. That concludes the last item on our agenda. I got a note here that was given to me. I wanted to see if I could get some volunteers to serve for judging on the Teacher of the Year and Support Professional of the Year documents. I need 3 board members. Since Ms. Bates is not here, I'm going to go ahead and nominate her.
She nominates by default.
She's one. I'm willing to do it as well, so I need one. You ready? You want to do it? All right. So we have 3.
When is that event, by the way?
That event is October. Is it the 25th?
Oh, I was just about ready to ask
25th.
that.
This is my son's birthday. The 25th of October.
Hey, Mark, the Teacher of the Year, Sport Person of the Year is October 25th.
It is tentative, but we can make an adjustment since we haven't finalized that, so yes, we can move forward.
That's up to you. Don't.
Okay. We'll talk.
We'll talk
some
about it
more
offline. We'll talk about it.
Also, I don't know if your schools have reached out to you, but each board member should select some community advisory group members to represent on the CAG committees at the schools. So if they haven't reached out to you, get with Ms. Alita Stender. If you have some CAG members that you want to nominate for the schools, I'll get with her and she can give her those names so she can put them in there. So,
Okay.
Have y'all done that before?
In
on
the
your
past,
side?
yeah.
Okay. I have as well. Mr. Brooks, have you done that? Okay. So those are a couple of notes I have. Anything else for the good of the board? Anybody wants to discuss before we adjourn?
Did we help out y'all's class any?
It's good to see you all. It's good to see you. Are you all going into education? Oh wow, great, outstanding. Yeah, come on back. We hope to see you as teachers. All right. Yeah. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Meeting is adjourned.